Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people story. Let me tell you a story that happened to me a few years ago. I had just retired from the military after serving for over 20 years, and I was looking forward to a peaceful life in my new home in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Little did I know that my homeowner association would soon come knocking on my door for a seemingly ridiculous reason. I had recently bought a new car, and my daughter gifted me with a few stickers to put on it, honoring my time in the military. I had one that read Semper Fi and two others that read Vietnam Vet and Proud Marine. I was proud of my service and wanted to display my pride on my car. I never thought that this would cause a problem with my homeowner association. One day I received a letter from the homeowner association, threatening to tow my car and fine me $50 a day if I didn't remove the stickers. According to them, the stickers were illegal and against neighborhood policy because they were advertisements. I was shocked and confused. I had no idea that my stickers could be considered advertisements, and I didn't understand how they could be illegal. I decided to reach out to the homeowner association board to try to understand their reasoning. I scheduled a meeting with them and went to their office to discuss the issue. They explained to me that the stickers were not allowed because they were against the neighborhood policy of keeping a uniform and aesthetic look to the community. They claimed that the stickers were advertisements for my military service and could set a precedent for others to put up non-uniform decorations. I was not convinced. I explained to them that the stickers were not advertisements but rather a display of my pride and gratitude for my service to my country. I also pointed out that other residents in the community had stickers on their cars, including political and sports-related ones. They didn't seem to care. I left the meeting feeling frustrated and angry. I couldn't believe that my homeowner association was targeting me for something as harmless as stickers on my car. I decided to reach out to some of my neighbors to see if they could help. They were just as outraged as I was and agreed to write letters to the board, stating that my stickers were not advertisements and should be allowed. Weeks went by, and I heard nothing from the homeowner association. I continued to display my stickers, hoping that they would come to their senses and realize that they were being unreasonable. But then, one day, I received another letter from the homeowner association. This one was more threatening than the first. They were going to tow my car and fine me for every day that I did not remove the stickers. I was scared and didn't know what to do. I couldn't afford to pay the fines, and I didn't want to lose my car. I decided to reach out to a lawyer to see if I had any legal options. The lawyer I spoke to was sympathetic to my situation and agreed to take on my case. We filed a lawsuit against the homeowner association, claiming that they were violating my freedom of speech and discriminating against me as a veteran. We also pointed out that the policy of keeping a uniform and aesthetic look to the community was vague and could be interpreted in many ways. The case went to court, and it was a long and stressful process. The homeowner association hired their own lawyers to defend their policies, and it seemed like they were determined to win. But we fought back, and after months of legal battles, we finally won the case. The judge ruled that the homeowner association was violating my freedom of speech and discriminating against me as a veteran. The judge also pointed out that the policy of keeping a uniform and aesthetic look to the community was vague and could not be used to restrict an individual's right to display their personal beliefs or values. I was elated. It felt like a huge victory, not just for me, but for veterans and freedom of speech everywhere. But the story didn't end there. After the court case, I received a lot of support from my community. People stopped by my house to thank me for my service and for standing up for my rights. Some even brought over cookies and other treats as a show of support. The homeowner association, meanwhile, was not happy with the outcome of the case. They had to pay for their own legal fees, and they were also required to pay for mine. They had to issue an apology letter to me stating that they had made a mistake and that my stickers were allowed under their policy. I received the letter in the mail, and while it was nice to have some sort of resolution, I couldn't help feeling like it was a hollow victory. The next one is a pro-revenge story. The background: back during the 1997 Asian financial crisis, Malaysia was hit pretty hard, especially the small independent banks. The Prime Minister at the time, Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, passed a bill to save the banking economy by having all the larger corporate banks buy out the smaller independent banks. At the same time, he made the One Malaysia Home Loan Policy. Under this, all larger banks that bought out the smaller independent banks must send an acknowledgement letter to the home loaners of their original banks, stating the home loan change, and must receive an acknowledgement from their new loaners, be it a signature, physical, or digital. The story? My dad never liked how banks can legally rob people. For people like him who work the daily grind, having to pay the bank what is essentially 2 houses worth in interest payments over 2 or 3 decades is just plain wrong in his eyes. He strives to one day screw a bank over like how they screw their customers. A contract, be it sheer dumb luck, or if God listened to his prayers and decided to grant him that opportunity, that was what he got. When my dad bought our family's first home, he got a loan from a small bank called DCB Bank. All was well until a few years later, the 1997 financial crisis hit. As the small banks were bought out by the larger banks, many home loaners received acknowledgement papers on their new home loan payment plan and policies by their new banks. My dad, for whatever reason, never received this. He only knew that his original bank was bought over by the RHB Bank Corporation and that he is now, unofficially, their customer. My dad was frugal with his money, and God bless him, financially literate. He knew that if he made a full settlement against his principal loan, he could avoid paying 30 years' worth of interest installments. Sometime in 2007, he went to an RHB bank branch nearby to make a full settlement, and this is how it went down. RHB employer: I'm sorry, sir. Even if you made a full settlement, you would still need to continue making payments for the interest. Dad: What do you mean? I have a home loan contract under DCB that states I can make a full settlement without paying for additional interests. RHB employer: True, but since you've acknowledged and signed under RHB, Dad, I've never received the acknowledgement papers, I never signed any papers from your bank, and all I have here is the DCB bank contract. RHB employer: Sir, under the One Malaysia Home Loan? Dad: You have to send acknowledgement letters about the loan transfer. Yes, I know. What I want now is for you, RHB Bank, to produce my signature of me acknowledging the new loan policy for RHB. As of now, my paper with DCB is still valid until you produce my signature. Cue 1 hour of the employer and her colleagues scrambling around their files and databases trying to find any acknowledgement from my dad about their loan contract. At this time, the manager of the bank had called my dad into his office to discuss this problem. It basically had gone from civil to a shouting match that can be heard in the neighboring food stalls. My dad couldn't remember most of what was said, but the end of it was what he could still clearly remember, and to his son, it was probably one hell of a badass convo ender. Manager: I'm sorry, Mr. Muhammad, but you still need to make the interest payments, regardless of whether you make a full settlement. Dad: All right. I understand. I'll just have to take this up to Bank Negara, National Bank of Malaysia. Let them help you find that signature of mine. My dad had the bank manager by the balls now. Rather than risking a potential $1 million lawsuit and possibly losing his job, he excused himself to make a few phone calls to upper management, which took about half an hour. After said phone calls were done, the manager approached my dad and agreed to the full settlement without the additional interest installments. To add salt to the wound, my dad requested that they have his housing grant ready within the week, to which they delivered. All in all, my dad managed to secure himself a house, the housing grant, and in the process, screwed RHB Bank of what is equal to $60,000 worth of interest payments, which to a middle-class Malaysian in 2007 is a retirement fund. The next one is a petty revenge story. I am a hairdresser who rents a booth in a salon, as do all the stylists who work there. The owner of the salon is one of my best friends, so after closing the salon I operated for 20 years, I joined her team, and I am really happy. I have a wonderful clientele with the exception of a few, which I'll get to in a bit, and get along great with my coworkers, except one, Kate. She has a grating personality, and for the most part, I can just let her comments roll off my back. She doesn't have a clientele, which leads to her having way too much free time, which she uses by pestering the rest of us while we are with our clients and butting into conversations that should be private. Recently, I had 2 of my clients tell me that when they called for appointments, they were told that I didn't have time for them, and that Kate would give them a discount if they came in with her instead. But they would have to come in on a day that I wasn't there so that my feelings wouldn't get hurt. Well, that's a load of nonsense because everyone in the salon knows that if I don't have an opening for someone when they call, they are to take down the name so I can call them personally to work them in. When I confronted Kate about those instances, she just shrugged and said that I was too sensitive, and besides, I was too busy, so she was really just helping me out. On to the petty revenge. I have a few customers that I have been trying to get rid of for years. You know the ones. They are never happy, always late, don't tip, and generally a pain in the butt. I decided that if she wanted my customers so bad, I would feed her the ones that I wanted to get rid of anyway. So when they had trouble getting in with me, I would tell them that I was booked out for months, but they would be really happy with Kate. She told me yesterday that she didn't know why all my difficult customers were her problem now. My days are better, it's a bit easier for my customers to book with me, and she is always in a bad mood for having to deal with unhappy customers so much of her day. Plus, a couple of my other coworkers have started doing the same. The next one is a petty revenge story. A little background info. My wife and I purchased our house a few years ago, and on the day we moved in, our neighbor Roger called the cops on us for moving in too loudly. We weren't playing music or even talking to each other, just my wife and I moving our belongings into our new house. The cops arrived and I explained that we were just moving in and they apologized for bothering us. Roger, in all of his retired proud boy glory, came out of his house immediately after they left to let us know that he was the one who called the cops and, in more words, said that he was setting the tone for our new life. Even still, we were super cordial with this guy because we wanted to make a good impression in our new neighborhood. It was our first home, and it was important to us to make it homey. About a year or so later, our first son was born. We let our property fall to the back burner while we adjusted to parenthood, and a few newspapers piled up in our driveway and, in the rain, sort of melted onto our driveway, all on our property. Roger came knocking on our door to complain. I told him I was sorry and that we let it get away from us. I explained that we have a newborn son and I would get to it ASAP. He dug in and started telling me how when he was a new father, he didn't let anything affect his property, and he told me I was being lazy. I said, then why don't you pick it up if you're so worried about it? To which he said, no, I want you to pick up the mess. I was trying to be semi-cordial still because I'm not interested in unnecessary conflict with my neighbor, so I told him fine, I would get to it, and he left. Later that year, Roger came over one day to ask if he could trim the tree that hangs over my fence onto his side of the fence, and I was fine with that, so I said no problem. He casually mentioned how one time when a 17-year-old kid, friends with his delinquent drug addict son at the time, broke into his garage. He hit him in the head with a baseball bat until he was retarded, and the police came, and he was cleared of all responsibility because it was a break-in. He was smiling and laughing while telling me this. Noted, I'm thinking to myself. This guy is a ducking piece of crap psychopath. Well, it's a couple of years later now with a few more minor run-ins, but nothing too significant, and my wife and I just had our second son 1 month ago. About 10 days ago, when my son wasn't even 3 weeks old, I got a notice on my door saying my lawn was in violation of my city's code. I mowed it 2 days before my son was born, so it's been about 3 weeks since I mowed. And it's been raining since. I had 48 hours to comply. I called the number on the card and there was no answer, so I called the non-emergency line to verify what my responsibility is because of the vague wording on the door hanger. It's because one of the types of grass in my lawn, growing very sparsely like 1 blade per square inch, is over 12 inches tall. The majority of the grass was like 2 to 3 inches long, but there was another type there as well that grew faster. I told them that I'm a new father and asked for an extension to deal with it later. They said not to worry about the lawn and just take care of the baby. So now, with some newfound confidence, I mowed my lawn in a spiral shape, leaving lots of grass remaining as a middle finger to whoever, we know who it was at this point in the story, right, called the cops on me about my lawn. A couple of days later, Roger talked to me over our shared backyard fence and asked about my lawnmower and if it was busted or something. I told him, no, I just have more important priorities than mowing my lawn, and told him about my new son. Then I asked if he was the one who called the cops on me about it. He said he called code enforcement, but not on me. He called on my new neighbors on my other side, a really nice Mexican family who are always diligent about their lawn and always working outside on their new property. He said code enforcement must have happened to notice my lawn when they went to follow up on his call next door. At this point, I said something along the lines of, "Look, I'm a pretty cool guy. If you have a concern about my property, then you can speak with me directly." He swore up and down that he didn't call on me and that it was just a coincidence. Whatever. About a week after that yesterday, he knocked on my door and I already knew what was coming. I answered the door kind of chuckling and greeted him. He was kind of chuckling too at this point because it's ducking ridiculous. He said, "Hey, so you said I could talk with you if I had an issue with your property." I told him, "Yeah, by all means." He gestured to my lawn and asked what it's about. I said, "It's kind of like a middle finger to whoever called code enforcement on me." He was irate. He said if it's a middle finger to him, he stopped him and reminded him that he told me he didn't call them on me, so he shouldn't feel targeted. He ignored me and restarted his sentence the same way again. So I cut him off again and said, "I specifically am telling you it's not a middle finger to you, Roger." He said, "If it's a middle finger to me, then this means war." "Over what?" I asked him, laughing. He was getting bigger and huffier by the second and told me I was a lazy piece of crap, and my property was in shambles, or LOL, and that all the other neighbors mow their lawn. I reminded him I have a newborn son, and that my lawn can suck my dick for now. He puffed up as big as he could and said, "I never had this issue when I was a new father." I told him I don't give a crap about what he did as a dad. Ironically enough, his drug addict son lives in the house on the other side of him and causes trouble in the neighborhood regularly. Cars peeling out, people screaming at each other, drug addicts always waiting outside, etc. Now he tells me that he's going to call code enforcement on me every day, and I tell him to get the duck off my property. He says, "Move me." So I tell him I'm calling the cops, and he says, "Do it." So I grab my phone and start dialing. He walks to the sidewalk and keeps yelling at me about how I'm lazy and not fit to own my property. The cops come and speak with us. It's very anticlimactic. They did make sure to let him know that he needs to get off my property when I say so, and that's all I wanted from them. Tomorrow I'm going to take my hedge trimmers and mow my maize down to 11 inches. Duck you, Roger. The next one is an entitled people story. To start off, I, 27F, have lived with my gran, 77F, all my life. She raised my older brother and me, and for that I am eternally grateful. However, even though I love her, I have to admit that my gran has always been extremely entitled, controlling, and even manipulative, mostly regarding my life in particular. I still live at home and act as her caretaker, as well as helping out my autistic brother. And because someone has made the accusation before, no, that doesn't mean I'm just mooching off of her. I actually take care of her. I cook her meals, I clean up for her, I help her bathe, do her hair and get dressed. I help her get to the bathroom and clean up after. I help her sort out her meds. I run errands and do the shopping, as I'm the only one who can drive. I help her get to appointments. I push her wheelchair whenever she's in it, and I do anything and everything else she needs. I have been doing most of these things since I was still in high school. Yes, she pays for everything, but that's only because she hasn't allowed me to get a job in almost 8 years, always telling me things like, "What if you were at work, but I really needed you," among other things. And even when I had a job, she took all but a fraction of every paycheck to put towards bills, which I was fine with at the time because I felt like it was only fair to pay my share since I finally had an income. Every time I bring up looking for a job now, she has a million reasons to keep me from doing so. Most recently, though, she's taken to hating my boyfriend, 24M, of 6 years, for pretty much no real reason besides for dating me. She talks crap about him constantly, calling him useless and good for nothing, insulting him behind his back on an almost daily basis, even though he's bent over backwards to help me out in many situations. She makes comments like, "He must not love you very much since he never comes around." But then she pitches a fit every time he asks me on a date. And the only times she ever wants him coming to our house are when she can exploit him, like roping him into moving furniture or cleaning out the garage. She makes backhanded remarks about how we've been together for 6 years but he's never proposed, but then raises hell if I spend more than a couple of hours with him on a date. She's even told me, "You know, I'd like for you to give me a great-grandchild sometime before I die." But she loses her mind if my boyfriend even so much as kisses me anywhere near her. My boyfriend is the sweetest, kindest, most hardworking guy I've ever known, and he treats me better than anyone in my life ever has. He even has a great job and makes a decent living, owns his own home and car, and is very good with his finances. But she still has to nitpick every little thing about him to try and turn me against him. She even talks crap about his family, mother and brother, even though they also treat me extremely well. And no matter how much I defend any of them, she won't stop. This kind of came to a head the other night. For context, we've just been informed by our landlord that, come June 2023, he's selling the house we're renting, so unless we can come up with $30,000 to buy it from him, we'll have to move. That's a whole different can of worms in and of itself. But what floored me was that, a few nights ago, my gran went from insulting my boyfriend's hair, he's been growing it out, to, maybe we should move to state that's 2 states away so you can get away from him, in the same breath. And no, she wasn't joking. I've been with him for 6 years, but she wants me to move away from him because she hates him. Now, as far as us possibly having to move out in a year, she 100% assumes that I most definitely have to move with her and my brother to keep taking care of them, no exceptions. My boyfriend and I are already talking about sitting down with her to discuss my moving in with him instead, and I'm dreading that discussion because I know it won't go well. All she's done for years is dependent on me to the point that she actively refuses outside help because Bunny can just do it. She refuses to move to a retirement or assisted living home. And to make things worse, she's already decided that, after she's gone, I will be taking over full care of my brother. Without even considering what I want to do with my life, I just know she's going to go postal and lay on a massive guilt trip when I finally tell her I want to move out entirely. But I want to get on with my life. I'm tired of my gran thinking she's entitled to my life. I'm sorry I don't have a conclusion for this right now. I'll try to post an update when we finally talk to her. Any advice for that conversation is welcome. I'll need all the help I can get. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.